Yo, you ain't told me it makes like a noise when it records.
Oh, bring.
Ding.
Yeah,
Dog,
yeah.
it sounded wild.
Yeah, it just lit.
Oh snap!
And hey, did you hear yourself last time?
Oh, you went.
Like from the last episode, did you hear yourself back?
Yeah.
How did it sound?
Yeah, it sounds good.
You
It's
fuck
not
with
bad.
it, right?
Yeah, it's alright.
How much is that?
That is like $90.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good audio record.
Showing lit. But it eats up battery a lot. So like for a day, you might need to change battery once. Like if you're shooting like 6 hour day, it'll probably the first set of batteries probably die after like 3 hours. Yeah.
How much? What's the SD card?
Oh, the SD card in there is 16 gigabytes.
Yeah.
But I
It's
mean,
the highest, right? That it can.
no, I could put. Oh,
You can put
is it?
2 gig in here, right?
It takes forever to like format though.
Oh, okay.
Like if you put it in there, it's gonna say loading for a long
Oh,
ass
it's
time.
gonna
Oh,
take forever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now
But
you
the
can
16
turn-
gig
turn
works
that
well.
on. Turn to the page. But yeah.
All right, so you ready to do the clap?
Yes.
Okay.
For the clock.
Hold on. 1, 2, 3. Oh shit! That was probably one of the best ones.
Hey,
Yeah.
DRB.
That was probably one of the best ones here.
Yeah.
So we're back again. 200 podcast.
200.
Thank you for tuning in, Joseph,
Aline.
and we
Come on,
have
mother-
wonderful special guest.
Saturn Chabong. Hey y'all, my
Hey,
name
go
is
ahead,
Saturn
rep your name,
Chabong.
Saturn. Let them know who you are.
So make sure you
got a
guys follow
queen
me
in
on
the building.
Instagram. Wow, queen. That's a pretty
Wow,
important
Queen,
title.
That's your name?
No, he said we got a queen in the building. So I was just like, wow. No, I only.
Instagram name was Wild
No,
Queen.
it's Saturn Chabong. I only go by my government Saturn
okay.
Chabong.
That's
Yep.
So give us a little background. Where are you from? Where is your family from? And yeah.
Okay. Well, I was born in Italy, Torino, Turin, Italy, to two Cameroonian parents. We're Francophone, Bamileke. So shout out to my Cameroonian people. Moved to the States in 2000, 2001, somewhere around that time. When we moved to the States, we moved to Montgomery County, Maryland. And then a few years later, moved to PG County. So like that's where I grew up. That's where I was raised for the most part. Went to Eleanor Roosevelt High School with these guys over here. So shout out to Rose,
2015.
Class of 2015. Moved to Santa Barbara, California in 2015 to start school, and then moved to LA recently to start at UCLA. So is that like what else?
Yeah, I mean.
Yes, I feel like that's like a synopsis of like my very short journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy you describe it as like very short because a lot of people are impatient.
Dog.
I would not have said that. I would not have
it's
been
not
like
short.
very short journey.
Did you say everything that you've been through was short?
I mean, it doesn't feel short, like, when you're living it, but if you look back, like, it's a pretty short journey. That's only, like, less than
people would
20
say, like,
years.
Adults would say, you're only 20 years old.
Exactly,
You still
yeah.
have-
Dog, when they say that, I'd be wanting to smack
I
them
know,
in the face.
I
But it's
hate-
like-
no,
If I was
hate-
bullshitting right now, you would not be saying that to me. You know
I
what I mean?
hate when, like, adults, especially when you're working in, like, I guess, in a certain field, adults like to minimize you because of your age. So I used to hate telling people my age. Like, I interned for the senator last summer, and when I would go to different events that she would send me at, like, I mean, I guess I look pretty young, but like, in my 20s is like usually a reasonable amount. But at that time I was like 19, just turning 20. And anytime someone would find out my age, you could see that there was like a switch in behavior. Like they would treat me a little differently. Like they would talk down to me, and it was just like, yo, like I'm in this position for a reason.
Whoa.
Like I worked hard to get here. And I had another internship where I was actually the team lead and I was the youngest employed there. And every time someone would come to talk to me about some event that was happening or ask any questions, we would be in our working groups, and they would always like look to the older like white guy to ask them questions, and then he would look to me, and like it would always be like that weird like, oh, like who do I ask? Like they never really thought to ask me because I mean, one, I think it's because I'm a black woman, and then I'm young on top of that. So like I hate when like people try to like play you because you like you young.
That's
you know.
crazy because I'm experiencing the exact opposite. It's like because I work at a restaurant now, and like I'll have conversations with people before I would even mention my age, and then that's when like somehow get around to my age, and I'll tell them my age, and it seems like they respect me even more. It's
Yeah.
like they're more open to telling me things, and they're like open to hearing what I have to say when I tell them my age. It's like, yeah.
I think when you get like around people who think they know too much, that's when they start to look down on you. And working in the type of job that I'm working, like one thing you have to be is like humble in a way. Even if you act out and everything around your peers, there's still that sense of like, I'm just another person. So like when they hear my age or something like that, they will act like, damn, like I'm really on my shit just because I'm not doing anything I'm not supposed to be doing.
I agree.
You know, like
I always like question when people try to play me on my age. It's like, were you doing what I'm doing at your age? You know, like when you were my age. And like a lot of the time, it's really a no. Yeah, so I feel like people like try to play me because like they're not out of necessarily jealousy, but they're kind of like, damn, like I wasn't really doing that at her age, so like let me humble her because she must be feeling something. And like, you know, at times like, yeah, I'm like, damn, I'm doing pretty good for myself at this age, and like that's okay to feel. Like it's okay to appreciate yourself and like acknowledge all of your accomplishments and what like how hard you work.
Appreciate it, but you.
Facts.
Really?
Facts. Yeah.
Nobody really gonna appreciate it like you.
So, what are we gonna get into first? We could do the DRB talk. We could chit chat a
I
little
want to
bit.
get into like your career path and
Or
like,
your
what
career
you
path.
express to the people, like where you're leading to and all that type of good
For
stuff.
sure.
Yeah.
I guess my journey has been a very, very interesting one because I guess just like the whole trajectory of it all, like I didn't necessarily think that I would be in this position. And Aleem, you know, like when we were in Mr. Shook's class, you know, cooking class, I wanted to be a chef junior year.
Yeah.
Like that's like, like yeah, like little people don't know this, but I wanted to be a chef.
When you just said that, like every like, did you guys ever see like X-Men where what's his name? Xavier, when he got the thing on his head and he was able to see everything. That's what literally just happened when you said that. Like so many memories.
All
of
the
that
mutants.
class, like all
I'm
that,
dead.
like all the memories of class just happened so quick in my head. That was crazy. Yes.
Yeah. So
I wanted to
like,
be a chef.
it was just, you know, it hasn't been more than 5 years since then, and like that was junior year. So senior year, as I was telling them before we started the podcast, there was a teacher that really influenced my life. Mr. Bradbury was our honors English teacher, and I will literally never forget the moment this happened. I don't identify as African American. I identify as Cameroonian, Italian, for the most part. But it was just like, for some reason, like this moment just really resonated with me. He was talking about Malcolm X's like most famous quote and how we should have all known it. And like this is, mind you, this is like an honors class of like majority Black students, and no one knew the quote. And like I kind of had an idea of what it was only because of Kanye's song. I'm like the Fly Malcolm X by any means necessary, but I didn't actually know the words, and like it was kind of embarrassing. And then he was just like, his quote was by any means necessary, and if you don't know your history, someone will teach it to you, and it will most likely be wrong. And like that moment, like I remember it was like a punch to the gut. I was just like, damn, like there should be no reason why I don't know this information. And from that moment, I was just like, I want to get into activism. And at the same time, all these things were happening. I believe it was like Freddie Gray at the time, and Trayvon Martin had happened the year before that, and it was a lot of stuff happening. And like getting older, I was starting to watch the news a lot more, and things like this were really being brought to my attention. So that was kind of like the wake of Black Lives Matter movement, and it was like I kind of found my calling in what I wanted to do and what I needed to do in a sense, because when you find your calling, it's not necessarily anymore about what you want to do. It's like what you need to do. And like you're restless if you're not actively, constantly doing that every day, you know?
True.
So like from that moment, like my drive and like something woke up in me. And I was just like, this is what I need to do. So after that, I was just like trying to figure out things when it came to activism, studying people like Stokely Carmichael, Angela Davis, not just like Martin Luther King Jr. and
Not
Malcolm
the people
X,
that they
but
want us to learn about.
exactly, but the people that were also very influential, and like SNCC and like just other organizations that
Mark
the
Garvey.
camera. Yeah, and like just other influencers of the movement, the civil rights movement, the Black Panther movement, the Black Power movement that we aren't really taught about. So yeah, when I went to college, I decided like I was still kind of like figuring things out, just because like in an African household, it's like you either become like some type of engineer or a doctor, like you're in the STEM
We
field.
all know.
Yeah, but luckily my father, him having been in film for such a long time, I was kind of able to have more leverage of what I could do. But if it was like, oh, I want to get into film, like that would have been fine. But it was like, I want to get into activism. And, you know, I still do film, but like being in activism, it was more of like, why do you want to fight for these people who aren't your people necessarily? Because, you know, my parents, they identify just as Cameroonian. They're African. But for me, like being raised in America, like I connect a lot with Black Americans. Like this is the culture that like I grew up in. So
This is the culture you're judged by.
exactly. And like people don't see me and like think, oh, like she's African, like that's, you know, she could slide. It's
Yeah.
like, no, she's Black, and that's
Black.
it. And that's like what my parents didn't really understand. So as I was trying to figure out my major, I was trying to understand what I enjoyed doing, which was like traveling and film, and also learning about different cultures. So I tried to get into international marketing, which landed me into an internship. And I did that internship for a while, and I discovered that I was like really pretty good at public speaking and doing that. But like my drive for activism never died out. So I got involved in the Black Student Union, and it was like crazy because like the more I try to get away from activism, the more I kept getting sucked in. And it was just like it was 1 year where like they really needed a lot of leadership, and there were only like 4 BSU members, and I, you know, decided to become president. And from there, like things really just like skyrocketed when it came to activism. I took on that role, but the year before, like that summer before, I started filming a documentary on unequal wealth distribution. And I think it's crazy, just like going back a little bit, going from a predominantly Black county, a very affluent Black county, because we don't realize like how blessed we are in PG. Like there aren't communities that you can like go through a neighborhood of huge houses and like, oh, like this is majority Black or like people of color. Like that's not a reflection of the United States. So like when I moved to Santa Barbara, a very white community with very little Black folk, I kind of I was forced to like embrace my Blackness more, because like when you're in PG County, everyone's Black, so everyone's comfortable and like you don't really have to worry. But like you have to be attuned to like your Blackness a lot more when you're not surrounded by a lot of Black people, just because if you aren't, you are going to assimilate without even really realizing it. And that was a huge fear of mine. So I try to build up a Black community as much as possible because of that reality. So like throughout my journey, I was really trying to, I guess, help the Black community as well as just like find comfort in the Black community at the same time. So building that really helped me on the path that I am currently now in. So I met this young lady, Mason Foster, who became my film partner, and we just had so many similarities but so many differences. And like we kind of just like meshed, and like creatively, like we just synced up so well. And we decided to start a project which was called Third Street, and we went down to LA like every weekend, which is a 2-hour drive from Santa Barbara, still SoCal, but we went down to this area called Skid Row, and it was unequal wealth distribution and segregation. And when you think about LA or just America, you don't think that it's still segregated until like you actually see it for yourself. And it would literally be like one long street, and in each community, it was completely different races. They were completely segregated. So like we went to like the Beverly Hills area, or like right outside of Beverly Hills on 3rd Street, and it was like all white Jewish communities, huge houses. You drive down like less than 5 minutes, and there's like Little Tokyo and like Koreatown, and then inside is Little Tokyo, which is crazy because those are 2 different cultures, but it's like an enclave of like Asian, I guess. Like they just like meshed them all together. And then you go further down and it's where like all the Mexican community is, like all the Latinx community, which is honestly just Mexican. And then my expectation for the Black community, I knew that it would be poor, but I didn't expect it to be what it actually was, which was literally Black people living in tents on the street. And that was where we saw the most Black folks at. And I think it really hit me because I wasn't really used to seeing that at all. Like in my community, I rarely ever see any homeless people. And if I do, they're really not, it's not very often that they're Black. Like in my area in PG County, like in Greenbelt. So seeing that, it was just like, it was a huge shock. And it was like, these are my people living like this, and the government is doing absolutely nothing about it. Like the community's doing absolutely nothing about it. And this is where I saw the most Black people the entire time I was there. So that's when we knew like this is what we need to film. So we would go down every weekend. We would literally be in that community of Skid Row and interviewing the residents and like having them tell us about their journey and how they got out here. And it was really just the war on drugs and like the government literally turning their backs on them. And from there on, like I was just like, I just needed, this is what I need to do. So my major became political science. Well, I had changed that earlier, and minoring in Black studies and film as well. So like that was like my entire focus, and everything I put in work, it was literally to build my community. So I literally quit my internship. I got a job for this department called Umoja, which was literally advancing the lives of Black students on campus. I became BSU president and like tripled our numbers, and just like literally everything I did was for the Black community. And I guess that's like really honestly all thanks to like that one seed that was planted a few years back, like my senior year in that class. So yeah.
You just spilled a lot of information. Now I have so many questions. So it's like, all right. So with what you're doing, what's the solution? I mean, or like, what's the goal for you exactly? I know you want to like, bring awareness to a lot of Black people and let them like, truly be in tune with themselves, and like, how to kind of like elevate their thought to kind of think at the level that they're thinking at, to be able to improve their lives. So like, what's like the goal beyond?
What's crazy about the work that I do is that in it, you realize that there's just so much more. Like, there's like this huge bubble, it's racism. And then when you get into it, there's colorism. And then when you get into that, there's sexism. So there's just like all these layers that you have to like peel. And like our lifespan is just so short that I had to come to terms, and, studying Martin Luther King Jr., is that I may not see change in my lifetime. So I had to come to terms with that. So I have to understand that there isn't just one solution, but there are ways to working to that and planting seeds in other people so that the next generation can handle it and further on. So what I can contribute is not only just awareness, but like actually being in these communities and speaking like, I guess, the white man's language and just changing things. Yeah.
What do you mean by the white man's language?
I mean, like, all the languages that I speak is the white man's language. When we talk about like English, this vernacular that we're speaking, when we're talking about French, when we're talking about Italian, like this is all the white man's language. I can't go into a lot of these meetings that I go into and like speak like I'm from the DMV, because they're not going to understand that. I'm not saying that you can't be yourself, but you have to realize, like, when you're stepping into these spaces, there are times where you, in a sense, do have to assimilate in order to improve the quality of life for your own people. So that's kind of what I mean by that.
True, but I believe that we're going toward a global society, and I feel like even though it's a big part of my life right now, my culture and where I come from, it's not really, I understand that it probably won't be relevant in a real way for many more generations. Just because I see
Exactly.
like just the individuality in culture, you know, the like possessiveness of it. What's your culture might not be my culture. Certain parts might overlap, but we don't have the same background. We don't have the same history. So it's like knowing that, I kind of am trying to rid myself of fear of like. I mean, I know my language is precious to me, and it will always be precious to me because that's like, you know, how I distinguish my family from your family, from Aleem's family, from like what is foreign to me. But I also understand like the importance for myself, like as a person who's trying to grow independent of society, just as a person. And I understand that like a lot of fear of what's white or what I have been raised, or just the whiteness that I was raised in this country, I'm trying to let go of a lot of that fear and just accept that as a part of myself. So the fact that when I'm in a professional environment, I feel it is formal, whether I was trained or not. I feel like that's just a part of the culture just as much as slavery is, and it's a part of us. Instead of trying to like fight against it and go to something that isn't in us, that isn't already instilled in us, to understand what we were given, what history has given us, what burdens we carry on, and kind of trying to like grow from that instead of like in a way regressing into saying, no, forget what you were taught, go learn something else for no practical reason other than to feel good. When in reality, you can just take the tools you were given and build a more beautiful, original, unique life out of that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't disagree with you, but I definitely do feel like, and this is actually, it's going to be a project that I'm also going to be working on with Mason, which is just the different, like, vernacular or colloquialisms of different communities. And, like, if we're being honest with ourselves, and we all know this, like, if you go to the Bronx, they're not speaking the same way as they are in DC or in Ohio. And, you know, every community has its own way of speaking. And then there's standard English, which I feel like that's the white man's English, whether or not you want to take ownership of that or not. But I just don't feel like that necessarily belongs to me. I feel like, and you mentioned slavery, and like the beautiful thing about that came out of that, that Black people brought out of that was their own way of speaking in different areas. And you go to New Orleans, and like that's just like, you know, that's a beautiful example of something coming out of like almost like a rose coming out of concrete. And then the South, another beautiful example of being deprived the opportunity or the ability to read and write, and taking that English and making it their own. So I think that like Black people are so resilient in their own way that they can take something that belongs to the white man and make it their own, and in a sense make it better, because that Southern accent that a lot of the people have down there derives from slavery. So like including the white folks, like, you know, they exactly, but all that stuff all that stuff comes from Black folks, you know. So it's just like we influence them more than they think they influence us, and like that's the beauty of it.
You know, when you were just talking about it, how you were just like explaining like the different parts having like their own slang. Like think about Africa. Like if he just literally just gave slang and we just titled it language, just simply just like that.
But why does our language have to be slang?
That's what I'm saying. Just the title slang just gave it that negative perception.
Right.
But you think it's a dialect? I would
agree
with
because people can do it. But if it came to like we speaking our DMV slang right now, we're all able to like connect and understand. That's a language.
But what I was trying to say is like I understand the importance of that in itself, and I appreciate it. But if you took somebody from the DMV and you took somebody from New Orleans and you had them talk to each other, there might be a disconnect.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's why I'm saying, like, when I'm talking about fighting against it, I'm not saying don't fight against it. I'm not saying don't cherish what's yours. But I just think that instead of trying to like revert the standard, we just need to understand that like as Black people, we just need to know more information. And actually knowing two languages makes you better than than discarding the language that you know. Like I feel like a lot of what I'm trying to say is this, I'll make it simple. I feel like people who are not in power always see the flaws of people who are in power because they always look up to them. And because of that, they think that their more pure perspective is any more perfect than like the person who's already in power. But I feel like if you're not in power, you just need to understand the language of your people down here, and also to get to the top, understand their language as well, and cherish them both equally.
Yeah.
Like everything has a scientific name. You know, you don't hear people from Germany complaining like, why don't we use when Germans are in Germany, they speak German. When a German scientist and a British scientist are talking and they're referring to a plant, they use a scientific name for a reason, you know?
Right. No, I agree. But I think, I mean, this might be like going a little off a little bit, but I also believe that like the people at the top also need to understand the language of those at the bottom, because those are usually, you know, they might be the masses, but they're usually the majority. And I feel like that's where the disconnect comes when it comes to politicians not understanding the language of those that they're honestly working for. Because if you think about it, like our representatives represent us. So if they don't understand what we're saying, then they don't understand our needs. So I feel as though we're becoming such a, I guess, like globalized community, intersectional. I think we need to start understanding each other. So like when I go into these spaces, I try to be myself as much as possible, but I also do understand that I guess this is just not like, we're not there yet. You know, I still have to speak to them in a certain kind of way in order for them to understand what I'm saying, in order for us to benefit, you know? So yeah, that's what I meant, just clarifying that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, also you being black and you also being a woman, how do you feel like that's really like, you know,
Yeah.
in the way of your progress?
Man, oh man, it is tough. It's really tough. I actually did a talk about this on my dad's TV channel, and it was just about feminism and like the misconceptions of a feminist. And a lot of the times there's this narrative that feminists are like these angry, like plaid wearing, man hating like people. Yeah, I mean like that's like the idea. And it's like, nah, like it's not even really about y'all. Like feminism is a movement to dismantle the system of patriarchy that men have benefited from for so many years. And to hate feminism is to hate women, essentially. Like it's aligned, you know, like literally all we're asking for is like equality. Like the beautiful thing that Angela Seal said was the fall, and I'm sure this is not her quote, but like the rise of women isn't the fall of men. And that is like what men need to understand, that me becoming great doesn't make you any less great. And if you feel that way, that's your insecurities. It's not like what I'm doing. It's like how you're feeling, you know, and I don't have any control over that, you know? So I think just like people needing to understand like what feminism is to begin with is really important in society. And then being able to separate white feminism from black feminism is also very important, because I feel as though a lot of the times Black women are left out of the conversation. Like Malcolm X said, that we are the most ignored and disrespected group of people to walk the face of this earth. And it's very true. We're always left out of the conversation when it comes to a lot of different topics. Like we talk about the wage gap, and that wage gap, I feel like those numbers tend to be very skewed, because if we're talking about those numbers in particular, like let's account for like the wage gap between black women and white women, you know? So like, let's talk about that. And it's just like, there's more and more and more into that. But a lot of my experiences with being a black woman in the activist field, like a lot of the people I look up to currently and like some of the older folks are Angela Davis and Amanda Seals and Congresswoman Maxine Waters, Senator Jackson.
Maxine Waters don't play.
Auntie Maxine don't play. Angela Rye, like a lot of these very strong females. And something that I know that me and them both have in common is like the angry black woman trope. Well, with the exception of Senator Hannah Beth Jackson, because she's a white woman. But yeah, like there's just this idea of like, oh, like, you're coming into this situation very hostile, and it's like, no, I'm just passionate. Like that's the difference. And I follow Angela Seals on Instagram, and I watch a lot of her Breakfast Club interviews, and I resonate with so much of what she says, because it's like girl, yes, like I literally get that same thing too when I walk into these spaces. Like people automatically think I'm like coming in here like guns blazing, just angry. And like if anyone who knows me knows that I'm like an extremely chill individual. Like there really aren't a lot of times where like even my closest friends and family can say that like, oh, like Saturn is like angry at this situation. Like I don't like I'm very slow to anger, and I don't even yell. Like so like it's just, to me, it's just crazy that I get painted as this like angry individual just because of like the caricatures that are placed on Black women. And a lot of the work that I was doing this past semester when it came to Black students on campus, there were a lot of meetings that I had to sit in with the president of the school, the vice president, a lot of the board members, and et cetera. And there were so many times where like my boss, who was a dean, he would come to me and my activist partner, Crystal, and he would be like, she's also a Black woman, he'd be like, listen, they think that you guys are pissed off and like they're ready to come hard at y'all because like they feel like you guys are gonna come hard, And like, mind you, these are people that have seen us in very professional settings, yet they still have this idea of us being the angry Black women. And like a lot of the times it was just like, yeah, we are angry, but that doesn't mean that we're gonna come in here flipping tables and whatnot. So it's just like, it's like sometimes I feel as though Black women and Black people in general, but specifically Black women, are not allowed to feel or be angry. Like we have to be these one-dimensional characters, these two-dimensional characters in order to really appease society and not fall into these, I guess, these stereotypes. And it was like it was so many times where like they literally thought I was like super angry. Like the president of my school literally came up to me and asked like, are you mad at me? Like, are you angry? And like asked for a hug, like legit. And it was just like, this is like the weirdest interaction ever to me,
You know why? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why. Because it's like when they're interacting with one another, tone and how.
Bro, it's not the same.
It's different.
So there's a dog park in College Park that I used to take Ocho to. And I didn't really like taking him that much. And my dad would always say, take him to the park. My dad liked going there. Because it's, he doesn't have to take him on a walk. He can let him run around with the dogs. He gets exhausted and he brings him home. And he can sit and watch the dogs. But for me, I didn't feel like, I felt like comfortable around them. They weren't mean or rude or anything, but I was like the only, I was like a younger Black dude coming in with like a pit mix. And I just didn't want, and Ocho is the most friendly dog compared to all the other dogs, but I just didn't want to have to deal with it every time. And on the weekends, there were, they used to play soccer because there were soccer fields, a bunch of, I think they were Nigerian, but they would all come and like take over the whole like fields and everything and just like play soccer. Fuck yeah, y'all crazy. So they would come, like speakers blasting like all types of music. They would eat like food and they would throw chicken bones in the parking lot. Like it was on some shit. It was just cool because it's biodegradable, so it's cool. But listen, so they were wilding, right? They're, like always. But for me, I'm just seeing it as like, people having a good time.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't realize that nobody would come to the park on Saturdays because I never really paid attention to it. But on Saturdays, the park, as far as the fields, were always lit. But the one place where all the white people used to go, which is the dog park, which is a very white place, a dog park. But that spot was empty. And like my dad told me, they were talking in the group chat and they would say like, yeah, they don't like to come because it's too rowdy. That's what they would say, is too rowdy. Wow. But like literally this is families just like cooking out and like playing soccer.
Yeah, but for them,
they were literally fearful. Like all those Africans talking their language in my park, this, that, and the third. Like so they're intense. Yeah.
Let's just look at society. Like nowadays, like white folks call the police on Black people for literally just selling water on the street, like just existing. Yeah. Like
they call their best friends.
Yeah, like Black people can't exist without like feeling like disturbing the peace. And I think Black folks in general, I feel like we have a lot of flavor to us, like musically, artistically, like we have a lot of flavor. Our food has flavor. Our way of dress has flavor.
Our skin tone.
Yeah, like we flavorful individuals.
Dark people right now, like just
we got flavor,
You know?
yeah. And like I feel like when white people see that, it's not the norm to them, and they get shaken, and they feel as though their community, like this just this whole narrative of make America great again, like just this idea of like entitlement and like this space belongs to me, and it's just like what, like we're literally just existing. Like what do you want me to do? Like why do you want me to assimilate to your culture so bad? Yeah. But yet be the first people to blast Migos in their car when they're with like, you know, Tommy and Billy and whatnot. So it's just like,
the thing is, like, bro, I always say this to Joe, bro. They start right here when we start right here.
Yeah.
You know, and there's so much that goes on in between there, like all the information that they're telling, all the things that we're going through. It's like they're just not able to really understand.
Yeah.
They just can't get it.
Yeah, and that was kind of like when you were explaining earlier about what kind of inspires you and stuff, and your the reason why you're on the path that you're on. That's kind of like what I was touching on. It's like when you're at the top, the reason they're afraid is because they know that, I mean, not that we're necessarily going to take power from them, but we are, though.
Yeah.
Because, like, not from them intentionally as far as, like, trying to belittle them, but if 100% of white people have a clean slate and 0% of black people do, as soon as it starts to shift towards 50-50, as soon as it's 99% and 1, some of them are going to feel that hit.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like that's really where that inferiority comes from, the fact that they're not guaranteed success.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And that really puts fear in their heart, because that's what we call reality, motherfucker. So, you know what I mean?
Like this idea of entitlement that they have, and there are so many incidences, like the one white student who felt as though, you know, affirmative action, like she didn't get into a school, and it's just like affirmative action actually benefits white women more than any other minority group. And then there was there's just like so many instances that happen that like white people fear their power being lost, and like that's why we're seeing such a spike in like, you know, white nationalism, because they're feeling like they're losing that power, especially ever since Obama was elected. Like they were scared, you know. And there's this there's this article.
They were shaking.
They were shook. There's this, and he's half white, so just imagine but like there's this article that came out about, I think it's like 2042, and how white people are going to be the minority that year, which is crazy, because they're not, it's like they're actually technically not even the minority. Like they're still the majority. It's just like if you combine all of the minorities and that number and then take white people, like the groups of minorities make more than them. So they just combined all of the minorities, and like it was like, I think like 50 or like 45%, and like white people were at like 30%. Wow. So like technically they're still the majority, but the amount of minorities is more than them, you know. And like, but that to them it's just like, we are not the most anymore. Like this is a problem.
Doesn't Cali have more Mexicans than white people?
Yeah, that number's, I mean, like California was Mexico, like at a point in time, you know, like that was like Azteca land, like that was Mexican land, you know, until the Mexican-American War, like, and that like completely messed it up. But yeah, like it's like, honestly, you know, being in PG, we see a lot of Salvadorians, Dominicans. Yeah. So like I wasn't, but the thing, I didn't really see a lot of Mexicans growing up.
There's a lot of Mexicans here.
I didn't, here in Baltimore, but like in PG, I mostly saw Salvadorians. Yeah. But then like when I moved to like, I was just exposed to like a whole new culture, like just like a bunch of Mexicans, just was cool. Like, I didn't really, you know too much about like, you know, Mexicans, but it was like, it's a huge shift. But it's just like, damn, even in y'all own like land, like white people like were able to take it over and make you guys feel as though you guys are taking up their space. And it's just, again, that entitlement is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, hey man, at the end of the day, it's just winners and losers.
No,
you know that too. No. But I said at the end of the days, winners and losers. Yeah. Oh shit! But that too, add that at the end of the day. You snooze, you lose.
Nah,
you know, I was outside smoking this morning, and I seen the birds, and I literally like the birds were out before the bugs. Like I saw, that's how early I was up. Like I saw the birds, and I was literally thinking in my head, the early bird catches the worm. Wow. Like I was seeing it, and I was like, damn, that's some wild shit. But anyways, I just wanted to add a quick little side note. Don't use your fear as an excuse to anger. because that will really not solve your problems. And you were talking about like a lot of the injustice and how we should be upset and stuff like that, and how white people are afraid, and you can see how much of a fool their fear is making them act.
Yeah.
So imagine like all the things that you do out of fear, black people, myself included, since I'm black, that you do out of fear, like just because, you know, you just need a way to release that fear, and you do it through anger, and that's not really healthy.
Yeah.
You guys should find a more healthy outlet, like living life, going for a walk, do something, meditate, smoke weed, whatever you got to do, just not crack, please, or heroin.
Don't do crack. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
But yeah, pretty much that's all I'm gonna say, just about fear and stuff like that.
I think to piggyback off of that, I always like to say be slow to anger. I think that's just like my Libra ways, but
Bro, that's the only way you can really win an argument, if you just maintain composure.
yeah.
Like when you
Yeah.
maintain composure, it digs in people's skin.
It does.
It's like, why isn't he triggered right
Yeah.
now? That's why I like really try to just like, you know.
It definitely
I'm on one
has
line
people
all the
shook.
time, you know.
It has people shook when they see that, like in situations where they know that you're rightfully angry
exactly.
and you don't show it.
You don't show it. Yeah.
I think that's the most powerful thing, being able to control your emotions in that sense, and
Yeah.
really being able to like think quickly in incidences where people expect you not to think at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing my dad used to tell me, actually. That stuck in my head.
What?
Control your emotions.
Control your emotions.
He always
I'm
used
sure
to say
it's
that.
probably for other things though.
He always
But,
used to say that.
was like,
Nah, it was like just in general.
Yeah,
Just like
control
every
your
time I would act out, he would just pull me into the bathroom.
I feel
and
like
just
it's an African thing though.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Africans
saying.
don't
Like
Yeah.
it wasn't. It was more so. He was hoping that you
Hey,
did take it and be able to say it. Like,
there are
yeah,
moments where I
right now.
still think about your dad's quote.
What he say?
Wait, he was just like, you told me, he was like, if you want to act like a
If you
clown,
want to be a clown, wait, hold on,
Oh,
wait, no,
Oh,
man. I can't believe you.
I swear, there are moments where I
Dog,
still think back that
Dog,
like,
if you
your
want to
dad-
be a clown, jump off the cliff.
I swear to
If you
you,
want to be a clown,
there are still
jump off the
moments
cliff.
where I just sit back and I just like think
Yo,
about that
that's
quote.
tough.
Your dad's so
Yo.
bad.
Oh man, yeah.
That's wild.
Proverbs, I swear they're the best.
Yo, my dad really did say that, bro. If you want to be a clown, go jump off a cliff.
That's
Yo.
that's hilarious.
Yo.
He's a legend.
But yeah, just to round that all up, yeah, man.
So so I want to ask you something else too. Were you offended when he called you a female?
Okay, so
Yes, please.
I've been
That's why I
seeing-
said woman right after that, because it's like you.
yeah, I mean, I've been seeing that a lot, and it all depends on like the individual. I personally was not offended by
Alright,
that.
cool, yeah.
I know
But
that
I
there
do
are
try to
certain
watch out in
people
yeah.
that are offended by those kinds of pronouns
Yeah.
For different reasons, but I am not personally one that is offended by that. So, yeah.
Yeah, quick question. Why do you feel as though now a lot of people are easily triggered through like simple conversations like that, because it can easily be, misjudged.
Yeah.
And another thing to add on top of that I would like for you to answer as well too, like, when you were mentioning like, how feminism shouldn't be viewed as like, women just being, just like overly aggressive and just trying to prove a point all the time. And then you said white feminism and black feminism. It's like so many different divisions now and it's not enough time for a lot of people to really catch up on this
Right.
information, to really like have it in their head.
Right.
And it's like I feel like a lot of people just say information now and expect people to just know instead of just trying to teach
Right.
people.
Absolutely,
So can you
yeah.
elaborate a little bit
Yeah.
on that?
So to answer the first part, I feel like people are, I guess, triggered by a lot of conversations nowadays, because I feel as though there's years of oppression, and like oppression in a sense is abuse and torture, and I feel like when you've been beaten down so much, or you've seen people who are in the same position as you being beaten down, you kind of have like PTSD, where you don't really know how to navigate certain conversations, and certain things can really bring you back to that place in your life where you were oppressed. So I always try to and it's really hard, because like you have to watch the things that you say so often nowadays because you're afraid of offending someone, and someone who isn't a part of the LGBTQ community but supports them. Like that was like something that I had to learn, and like different pronouns, and understanding transgender movement and different things like that, in order to make people feel as comfortable as I possibly could. And again, someone who doesn't identify as that, but like you never know who is going to be in your life that you come across that does. And like as an activist, like I can't be an activist and completely neglect groups of people that are very marginalized as well, so like it's all about like doing your research and having conversations with actual humans as well, and like seeing, and like what just like this whole female thing, what's cool for someone may not be cool for another person. Like one person can be like, yeah, I'm queer, and another person can be like, I don't want to be, I don't want to use that to identify, with, so like don't call me that. So it's like you have to talk to the individual and like know what they're comfortable with, and like befriending them in that way in order to make them feel comfortable as well. So like I feel like, again, like being triggered is just like years of oppression and not wanting to be back in that space again. However, I don't think that that's an excuse to not being willing to have conversations. I feel like it's so important to have conversations with people, and like some people just don't know. And I don't want to say it's up to us, the individual, to teach it, but like if you want people to change, conversation is the only true way to like actually make that happen.
You're completely right.
But to defend that as well, it's like, hello, Google it, like at the end of the day, like we have access to things like Google, where it's a simple search that you can do. So like, I feel as though a lot of times people just don't want to make that effort to finding out like different things. Like people just don't want to do that research, which is really frustrating to me, because I feel like we live in 2018. Like this is the 21st century. Like you should be able to pick up your phone, your iPad, shoot your watch, and like search some certain information up if you don't want to read a book about it. Like even for my male friends, like I'm constantly recommending books in general, but like for my male friends who tend to say problematic things, I try to educate them as much as possible, but like I also just refer them books. Like I'm reading this book, Feminism is for Everybody, and I just sent it to like some of my homeboys, and I was just like, hey, you should really read this book, and like you'll get a better understanding more than I can like articulate it. So
So there's a quote that I want to read that I think encapsulates what you're saying. And it is from Notes of a Native Son, the preface of the original version.
Oh, I gotta read that.
Yeah, but this isn't even his quote, which is the craziest part. This is a quote from Doris Lessing. And basically it goes, while the cruelties of the white man toward the black man are among the heaviest counts in the indictment against humanity, color prejudice is not our original fault, but only one aspect of the atrophy of the imagination that prevents us from seeing ourselves in every creature that breathes under the sun. So that's kind of like what you were talking about. There are a lot of things that I don't understand about a lot of marginalized groups, but I have to force myself to see them in me and me in them.
Exactly.
And I feel like when you respect another individual as an individual, you are slower to anger. And I think a lot of that tension, a lot of that misunderstanding comes from a lack of respect. And if you don't see value in that person as an individual, as something that walks this earth, then you're really not going to give them that respect. And I find myself still like, even though it's not true to who I am, I find myself slipping into that trap of like making a joke or saying a comment that I'll think later. And it's not even anything that's like considered taboo. It's just like a joke. Like it could be anything. And whether people are triggered by it or not, later on when I'm reflecting, I'm kind of like, I mean, if I really was thinking from a respectful place, from like an understanding place, would I have said that? You know what I mean?
A lot of it comes down to like, is it worth it? Like, is what I'm saying worth making someone feel so deeply uncomfortable? And like, that's what it really comes down to. And just like having that understanding and defending, like when you see stuff like that, like when you see injustices, like defending those people, even if it doesn't directly affect your personal life. Like at the end of the day, like we're all humans and we should really all love each other. And when you see stuff that's happening that's just like really not right, like it is your job to speak up on that, you know, like having African parents, like they talk crap about gay people all the time.
All the time. I mean,
And
it's
it's
part of
like
their culture, and
it's a part of the culture, yeah.
and it's also like, you know, religious perspectives as well too. That
Yeah.
plays a huge part on that, and I
Yeah.
think that's another thing that like really pulls people from like the simple thought of just treating everyone equal.
Yeah.
You know?
I
But you know,
I
if
agree.
you ask an African, they'll be like, "Yeah, man, everybody should be equal,
Everyone
man."
should
Oh my
be
goodness,
equal.
that's
Exactly.
They're the first one.
Exactly.
Fact.
And then how you feel about a gay
Africa's-
person?
Yeah.
What is that?
Africa,
In my ear.
Africa is one nation. Africa is one nation. This, that, and the
Yeah.
third. Da 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 da. As soon as you ask them what's the best, my country. is
Whole
the best.
energy
Yeah.
switches.
Whole
energy
energy.
switches.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a fact, and it was actually crazy because like it was, and like when you defend gay people to African parents, they're like, "Are you gay?"
Are you-
Like,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
like I don't have to be
I don't have
gay
to-
in order
yeah,
to defend
yeah.
people's rights, you know, and like. It was funny because like, well, it wasn't funny, but my mom came to me like very disturbed and like distraught, and I was just like, you know, what's wrong? She comes to me for advice a lot, and vice versa. And she was just like, one of my like I have that relationship with my mom. It's pretty cool. And she was like, yeah, like one of our family friends just found out that their son was gay. And like, so I was just like, you know, yeah. So I was like,
That's
you
even
know,
worse.
tell me, yeah. It's like to them, it's like the son is like the male, the pinnacle, like the you know. So
Yeah.
she was like telling me, yeah, like they just found out, and like I'm not saying that guys who do makeup are gay, but as a parent, as an like, so like he like beat his sister's face for like graduation, like makeup was like on fleek. Apparently he only hung out with gay people, and it wasn't until like he was having a party of just like, I guess it was, I don't know, maybe it was like Pride, and like it was like a bunch of gay people in the house.
Okay.
And
Start to catch on.
and then that's when the mom was just like what's you know, like what's going on, like tell me what the tea is. And like he came out to her in that moment, and my
the
mom
party?
yeah, I mean she took the boy in the room, yeah. But it was like my mom was just like, yeah, like can you give me advice on like what to give to her, like can you talk to her? And I was just like, to me I thought it was ridiculous that like it was even something to be so distraught about. But then I understood that like you have these expectations for your children, and like, you know, you see a life for them essentially, and you just don't expect it to be this way. So like that person kind of dies, like that idea that you had of them
Yeah.
dies. So like, I had to understand that, and I was just like, well, at the end of the day, she needs to love him regardless, period. And that's what it really comes down to, in my opinion, is to love. And even as like, no matter what religion you're in, whether it's like Islam, Judaism, like Christianity, all the holy books indicate the same thing, which is love. You know, like in Christianity, the two most important commandments that are stated is, you know, love God before, you know, anything, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. And like without those two commandments, like I feel like all the other stuff is really debunked at the end of the day. You know,
I mean,
those
they
are the
all- yeah,
two
they all
most
feed off
important
of each other.
commandments,
It's
right?
like, yeah.
And like, you know, all the religions are subsets of each other. So if that one says that, and like that lady's a Christian, then it's up to her to realize that she needs to love her son regardless of the lifestyle that he is living.
yeah,
You know, unless he's
yeah.
like killing somebody, then she, you know.
No, and then I feel like Africans are the biggest hypocrites. They like to pick and choose what they want to like live and abide by.
Yeah.
And it's like
they
it
love
doesn't-
being editors.
Dude,
Africans
yeah,
and black
it's-
people, man. It's the
Huh?
same shit.
You said
Africans and black people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
They
it's just
edit
like-
out a lot of
and I
shit
feel
that
like,
they don't
you
want to
know,
follow. They make excuses for themselves. Let's just keep it funky, man.
I mean, I
We
think
can be
that's all
critical of our people just
I think
as
that's all people, because
Yeah,
at the
man.
end of the day, when we were voting for gay rights, who were the people that were like, you know, I guess like in charge of that? Who were the people who were against it? It was like white, Anglo-Saxon Protestant males.
Yeah, but we don't have the luxury of making the wrong decision, of like feeling bad for us. We don't have that luxury. So even though everybody does it, it only is really going to have an immediate effect on us. And at the same time, while we all have to see each other and ourselves, we also have to recognize when our brother is down. And like, I feel like really people just need to just suck it up, whatever you gotta do, go to therapy, figure some shit out, and just find a way to really propel yourself forward into like things that you may have never known, that your family may have never shown you, that your parents may not have never taught you, and just kind of think bigger. Think about what the life you want to build is,
but I
not
feel
really
like
the
that's
life.
so individualistic thinking, because there are so many systematic hurdles that Black folks have to go through that other communities don't have to go through. Like, Black people in America have been set back, historically. Like, just if you look at the history of it all, they've been set back so much. And I'm saying they because
Bro, we're not
our
from
communities,
here.
yeah, we're not from here. So like, Africans weren't set back in the same way that, so like, I think when we come here, we tend to forget that because we're so immersed in this culture that we like think we're one, but we historically, like, we've had our own challenges, but it's very different as far as like systematic oppression that Black Americans have had to gone through. So I don't think like we can't give this whole pull yourself up by the bootstrap narrative if like there were generations you don't even have the boots. There were generations that were deprived of employment, of education, just like systematic hurdles that they just could not overcome. And like we are just now able to actually go to the store to even buy those boots, to be able to pull ourselves up by.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but I just don't think there's another option. Like that, if
there's no option for the life that you're living right now.
Yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, I'm not
but that's a sacrifice that she's willing to take for like the future.
True.
So like even though right now things are the way they are, the seed that she's planting right now could be soon grown like for the next person. So that's the optimistic thought there that makes people like really drive in that area to like really push.
I mean, that's the whole reason why I do what I do.
Exactly.
Because like I know that like I can't have an individualistic mindset when it comes to these type of things. Like I need to know that the work that I put in is gonna open doors for the young Black, the chocolate sister behind me or the chocolate brother behind me to come. So like when I put in all this work, like I always in my mind, like I'm always driven, like those all-nighters that I pull, like all the trolling that happens on my Facebook page and my homegirl's Facebook, like that stuff is like that is gonna lead to doors being opened for the next generation. So like I'm breaking sweat just like our ancestors did for the next group to come, so like they don't have to work as hard. So
what's the wildest thing anybody has said to you on the internet? And then I want to know what the wildest thing anybody has said to you in real life.
Okay. So maybe not
we got time.
Directly to me, but just there's just I honestly, like, if you guys have watched the season 2 of Dear White People,
I ain't seen season 2 yet, but
when you watch it, just like take Sam out and just put me in there, because like that was literally like my semester high key.
Wow.
The wildest thing that has happened to me on social media.
I have not seen season 2 yet. I might start it tonight. No, that's a ton.
Oh,
season 1
it's a great show. You gotta watch it.
It's a good show.
I relate to the main
show.
character on so many.
But Sam really knows a lot of people don't really like her character.
You know what? A lot of people don't really like me. So
that's true.
Like, nah, I'm kidding.
I
feel like I'm a social butterfly. I'm pretty lovable. No, but I think the wildest thing was someone going on my BSU page and just like posting a lot of like really problematic things. Just yesterday, like this guy who was actually running for president of ASG posted this thing. Student government, sorry. Saying that like Black folks supporting what's going on with everything with the immigration with Mexicans and deportation and stuff like that is regressive to us, and how putting immigrants first puts Black people last. What? And I'm like, first of all, there are Black immigrants. I am one. Second of all, Black people are already last in this country, so like what else do we have to lose? Third of all, why is it's not like a competition of oppression? So like that was posted. So my response was, don't forget where your ancestors came from, colonizer. So like that was my response to that.
That was your internet
colonizer.
That was my internet response. I think in person, there have been so many situations, like I'm trying to think. Oh, okay, so I was in this meeting. I was going to this meeting to try to get us a space for Black students and just to tell the president our grievances. And I kid you not, I felt like this was like an episode of some black TV show with like some crazy like white guy just doing stupid stuff. He came up to us and he was like, before we get this started, I just want to show you a picture of my father. And he shows us a picture of him. And he's like this Filipino man. And he's just like, I understand what you guys are going through. I saw my father go through the same thing. He's like, my father was in between, and he was talking to me and my activist partner, Crystal. And Crystal's like, she's a pretty like light-skinned girl. And he's like, my father was in between you two's complexion. This man shows us a picture of his dad. And like Filipinos are dark, so I didn't question it until he showed us the picture. And his dad was light and like just like pretty white passing. And like this man's white passing, he's very tall. And like he's like, showing us a picture, and he's like, so I understand what you guys are going through. Like, I get it. I've been there. I've been in lines where like they decided to serve me first before my dad. And he was just like telling us all this. And I was sitting there looking at this white passing man, like, you really have the nerve to tell me, a black woman, you understand what I'm going through. Like, I was literally shook. I mean, that's not the worst that's happened to me, but that was like something very significant, like of a white person just like overstepping and just like,
hey man, I'm gonna say
getting
this.
too close for comfort.
I must abide by this. A black woman is God. Period.
Amen to that. Amen.
So things that like, dude, these white babies that are now 70-year-old thriving, we're getting breastfed by
black
our
women.
black women.
Yeah.
It's just so crazy.
It's crazy to think about and very creepy. But yeah, that was happening. That is what was happening.
Like, their foundation of nutrition was thriving from us.
Yeah, we were the source of their life, to be
Like,
honest.
what?
Like, yeah, that's factual. So I think that, and another thing, I remember my freshman year, crazy thing. I lived in this like little area called Capri Apartments in a really big college town. And it was this white guy and his girlfriend. And I had a homie who was from DC. He was a white guy, but he had moved to, I met him in Santa Barbara. So he was like the only one that like we were really down, DMV, like, and he was used to black people and he defended black people and he's an activist himself. And I wasn't there in that moment, but they were playing Niggas in Paris, Jay-Z and Kanye Watch the Throne. And the white girl said nigga. And he like went off on her and kicked her out the apartment and just, like he like went off. Like this white guy from DC went off on this white girl. And the next day, and the next day, her boyfriend was driving me to school because we were like commuting together. And he like goes off, he's like, yeah, can you believe that Aiden did this, that, and third? And like before this incident, like I was like, in a sense, like that token black girl that everyone gravitated towards, like that cool, like, like they just like saw something in me that they were like, yeah, she's like so down, like black girl, like, yeah, like she's dope. And then like, I was like, little do you know. So like, he's driving me. So I'm like, I'm not gonna go off on him in his car for he dropped me off on the side of the road. But he's like, going in, he's like, yeah, like Saturn, can you believe that? Like, dude, like I was like, it was so gnarly. And I was just like, I was literally like, yo, like this man is tripping. So we pull up to the school and I'm like, and then I just like go in and I'm like, she had no right to say the N-word. Like, what is wrong with her? Like, and I'm just like going in and then I was like, but I'm gonna like leave that here. And then I go to class and I'm still feeling like very distraught. This is my really first incident with a white person saying the N-word, especially like to this degree and like just all the drama that was surrounded by it. Because it was my first year in Santa Barbara. Hadn't spent too much time around white Americans. So I wrote them this like long ass text message. And like, it was like, I added, like, I was like, it was in the group chat of them two. And I like wrote all this stuff about like, you're not like, you don't have the same systematic oppressions. Like you have no idea what it means to be a black person. So you shouldn't even want to say the N-word, and like quoted a bunch of like people that I love, like Mark Lamont Hill and just like all this stuff. And like his response was, I didn't even read all of that, Saturn. He was just like, it's whatever. And like, I was like, I know this white man did not just say this to me.
I think you kind of dug your own grave in that one.
Absolutely not. I will always speak my mind when it comes to
No. I'm not talking about because you spoke your mind. I'm talking about like He's not gonna read that.
I mean, but the thing is, mind you, this was like my first interaction. I thought me and this dude were cool. He was giving me rides to school. Like, I thought it was like, I thought he would listen, Yeah, and like his response was like completely dismissive and like completely disrespectful. And so like in this situation, like my friend from DC was wrong because he called her a cunt and told her to get out. Excuse my language. And I was just like, the way you felt about that. I told her the way you felt about that. 'Cause she was super distraught about that. And like, that's what they were really fixated on. And I was like, that is how I feel times 10 anytime a white person uses the N-word. And then
you can't even say that because then they'll really think that they understand what you're talking about.
Right? No, right.
Like,
but
it's not a feeling of like helplessness. You can't amplify that.
Right. I mean, it was just trying to make them understand like this is like that's the gravity of like you using that word. And then she's like, you have no idea, and you will never know how I felt in that moment. And I was just like, girl, what are you? I'm a woman, so like I do understand I was just like, what are you talking about? And like she was just going off at the mouth, and I was just like, all right, I'm not gonna engage anymore. So I wrote in the group chat of like everyone who lived in that complex, I was like, don't use this word around me or there will be problems. And like no one did, everyone respected that, but like I was definitely ostracized after that. Like everybody,
I bet you were.
I was so ostracized, and like
it.
Before then, no one like knew like my political standing or like like how involved I was, and I really wasn't even involved at that moment. But from that moment, I was like titled as like the over opinionated, like she's just a bit much for us, and just like I was like completely ostracized, and I was just like, oh, that's how it is. I mean, I was cool with it because I didn't really care for them anyway, but I was just like, this is the energy that they were giving me. And I was like, that's fine. Like, I'm, doing me, and I don't really need you guys anyway. Yeah. But I think what blew me the most was that the only two black people that were other than me, like, were defending this white girl. And I was just like, okay, so this is how California is. Cool.
I mean, like, if somebody was singing a song and they say nigga, do you really, like, are you upset? Are you upset because?
Yes.
I mean, are you upset because you think that they know what they're doing?
Absolutely. Listen, if you can bleep out cuss words when you're riding in the car with your parents, you can bleep out the N-word. Period. You're not your mind isn't that. It's not. You're not stupid. Like we are capable of bleeping out certain words no matter how much into the moment we're in. Like it's a possibility to avoid saying the N-word. It's one word, and it's really not that difficult not to say, like it's not hard. When you're in a job interview, are you gonna curse? Are you gonna use profanity? No. So it's the same thing, avoiding using the N-word in certain contexts. And if one white person can do it, then all of them can do it. It's no excuse. So there is no reason, like honestly, and I'm not even, all people of color who aren't black are not allowed to say it. Like, I don't care. So when I see people interviewing like 6ix9ine, I get annoyed when people don't check them on that, like.
Because it's like with the genre that he's in hip hop, that's like.
Don't use it.
That is the most commonly used word in hip hop, period.
Yeah, but just.
And even
you can't use it.
Yeah.
Eminem didn't use it.
The thing is like this.
Yeah, but Eminem, okay.
Look.
And
I'm not saying I agree with this or not. I'm just saying what it is. Eminem is white. 6ix9ine is what, Mexican?
Yeah.
So in our culture, it's okay for a Mexican to say it.
Whose culture? Not mine.
This is whether you like it or not.
When I grew up in the hood, when it was like Mexicans struggling, black people struggling, everybody around me except for white folks that
say nigga.
Yeah, I get that, but at the end of the day, like they still didn't go through what black people went through in this country. They still don't go through what black people go through in this country.
Yeah.
And also for a lot of black people, they don't have a place to go back to. Like America, this is all that a lot of black folks have, like black Americans.
Yeah.
Like Mexicans, and I'm not saying go back to your country, like that's not what I'm trying to say, but they have a country to go back to, whether or not it's a good one or not. A lot of black people were brought here and their identity was erased, so like they don't need to identify with the struggles that we identify with. Like they don't, like it's not on the same level. Yeah, they still wave their flag. A lot of black people can't do that because they like their flag is the American flag. Like this is their community, and like the word nigga was taken back by black people, not Black people and Koreans and Mexicans and Japanese people. It was Black people.
I ain't know Koreans was allowed to say that shit.
What? Have you not?
I don't live in LA. Koreans don't say nigga here in Baltimore.
But there's a very small amount. But even in the rap is becoming really big in areas like Korea and Japan.
They say it over there too.
Yes, listen to their music. There's that one guy, Rich Chiga, and just like all that stuff. Like they
he changed his name completely.
Yeah.
So what?
Something.
But he was blowing up though.
That's the thing though. Like a lot of people think that they can say because they're people of color, and it's like, no, you cannot. You know, like stop trying to appropriate. Nah, they can't say it in my book. It's gonna listen. Any person of color that says it who isn't Black, it's gonna be a problem. Period.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. So in the Dominican Republic, they're all okay. But let me finish what I'm saying though. Their culture, as in the Dominican Republic, whether it's because their original history was erased or not, they identify a lot with Latin American culture, which is very mixed and diverse, but they speak Spanish.
Right.
Okay. Is it a skin tone thing? Like, where is the distinction? Like, because there are a lot of Dominicans, a bunch of people consider themselves, I don't know. Is it a skin tone thing?
Well, one, Dominicans are Black. Like, I feel like they're yeah, of course they have Spanish mix, but a lot of Americans have Native American mix in them. They also have a lot of British and French. Essentially like a lot of Black Americans or Black Islanders are mixed, and people tend to forget or not even realize that only 3% of slaves were brought to North America. The rest of them went to the islands in South America. So if you really think like those people, they are Black. In the Dominican Republic, mind you, it's like glued to Haiti. Yeah. But for some reason, people like to make it seem like Haitians are just a little more Black than than Dominicans. And I think it's because of the language. Dominicans speak Spanish and Haitians speak French. But at the end of the day, like, they share the same blood. They were just colonized by different people. So it's really, about where your roots go to. And I guess, like, that can be argued, like, are Africans allowed to say it? And just, like, these, these politics. But at the end of the day, if you living in America and you're Black, you a nigga, period. Regardless of how you choose to identify. Like, that is how society is going to identify you as.
So do you think part of your job as an activist is getting away from that completely? Of like figuring out a way to help people understand, not just Black people, but everybody understand that, like, no, not saying it, but just, which is, because that's a byproduct of what I'm talking about, but like understanding that just because you are Black in America doesn't make you inferior, which is what the word nigga really epitomizes, is inferiority.
Yeah, absolutely. I want Black people to be unapologetically Black, and also to realize that there's so much diversity within Blackness. And I think that's what my next project is going to be about, just the different vernaculars that we speak. It just shows that, like, there's so much diversity in Blackness. Like, sitting on this couch right now, like, we have a West African, a Central African, and an East African. Yeah. And like, our cultures, despite us being from the same continent, is very, very different. Very different. We speak different languages. We eat different foods.
Even the accent, like the accent.
Even the
he would
accents,
do that with the Africa for him.
Is different. Our clothing is different, and like, us being raised in PG County, like, it still makes us different. Like, we have Black Europeans, we have Black, Islanders, we have Black Latino people, so it's just like, it's like understanding the diversity within Blackness in Black people as well. And like, I think Black people want, and it's not our fault, it's just like how society paints, like, there's this type of Blackness, and like, that's the circle that we need to be kept in. Yeah. But I, for one, can firmly say that I don't fit into that box, because like nationality identifies so many things. Like, I'm not American, and like, I wasn't born in Cameroon. I was born in Italy. A lot of my family, they're Italian, a lot of them are half Italian. Like, I have white people in my family. Like, I'm very, attached with Italian culture because of the way I was raised. Like, home to me tends to be Italy, just because that's where I was born. I spend a lot of time there. I go back there. Most of my family's there. And to a lot of people, like, that isn't necessarily Blackness, you know? And like that doesn't fit into that box. But again, there's like so much diversity in Blackness.
Like either referring to the mob or like,
right, exactly.
Pizzeria.
Right, and they never
like,
think of Black Italians when there's a large community of Black Italians. Like, you know, my family's is a huge chunk of that. So like, they're a huge chunk of that. So like, you know, when you think of Blackness, I think us as individuals and just as a collective as well, we need to stop minimizing it to like one experience or just like one identity, when there are so many different identities. There are so many Black people who speak different languages and, you know, grew up in different ways. Like just like the Black British community, there are some dope ass niggas. Like they're so dope, and you know, like they're really thriving right now. And like, you know, shout out to them, like the Black community in France as well, and just different parts of the world, you know.
You think, well, I don't know, this is kind of a question that, I don't know if it has any value, but you think if you're Black, do you think, because you know there's that argument that's made that Black people from the UK shouldn't say nigga. Do you think that's valid? I don't think so. But
I don't think so either. Like, you know, the people who created racism are the British. So like they was using that, you know.
There you are.
So, you know, I mean, it's like, it's factual. Like British people use it, you know, against Black folks as well. And, you know, like that, if they feel as though they want to reclaim that word, you know, I think that's also up to them. It's just, it's not really something that we can minimize. I mean, like, I think the dream is like that we don't have to use a word like that in order to feel as though we're forming our own community, because we're going to be so intersectional and everyone's going to love each other. But the world that we're living in now, like if that word bridges us together, cross seas, then like, you know, let it be.
Yeah.
True. Thank you for that insight very much.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
One last thing, I want to get into Kanye before we conclude this, because we're over the limit now. So I want to get your perspective, because Joe and I, we've been having so many like not arguments, but that's like, you know, this debates.
Delegating responsibility. Where does it go? To the viewer or the artist?
Yeah.
Pretty much. That's what it's about.
Pretty much. So like, well, it wouldn't be necessarily of his like his viewpoint per se. It's more so just the actions, and we'll like have our differences on that. So I want you to dial in a little bit on like, how do you feel about like that whole situation and how it's kind of like playing itself with the public eye right now. So
Yeah. Man, oh man.
'Cause I know, you a huge Kanye fan too.
Yeah, I was. When I tell you,
go ahead.
I was a Kanye stan.
Stan,
like
I ride for Kanye.
You about to say some wild shit right now.
Go ahead.
I used to like. This is why, like, when I say what I'm saying, like, no one can tell me nothing. Just because.
Shout out Kanye.
I know, right? I was like, no Kanye Association is in it. See, that's how much I used to love Kanye. But like, no one could tell me nothing just because I love this man since I was like 6 years old. Like, I literally have his vinyl, his, you know, like his albums, like in like CD form. Like, I have posters of this man. Like, I spent bread, dinero, going to this man's concert in general admissions. Like, I think it was like around $300. So I was a Kanye
I ain't paying for no Ye
stan.
ticket unless I get a Ye invite.
Listen, I was a stan, Kanye stan. Literally could name out. Anyway,
Yeah, I know.
So, and that's what we shared in common too. Like, I was a huge Kanye fan. So like, the moment I decided to take those posters down, that was honestly a moment where like, it was, because it was a huge, like, and like, people told me I was exaggerating, but I didn't know life without Kanye. Like, I don't know hip hop without Kanye West, you know?
Do you now though?
Nah, man, I didn't listen to his album. Because I can't support this man. And the reason why that is because when you are a public figure, whether you like it or not, you have a responsibility to pass the message along to people who, you know, like, support you, people who look up to you. And when you are supporting the rhetoric of someone like Donald Trump, I just cannot support that, because this is a man who's responsible for caging up little children, for deporting hundreds and thousands of people, for oppressing communities and, saying, very insensitive things and inciting a lot of the racial violence that we see today. And I just can't support someone who supports him, Like I can't do it, because it's just like, what does that make me?
What you're saying
a hypocrite,
is so
a Trump supporter adjacent.
Listen. You're so right though. Woo! But listen, right? And we were talking about it earlier, like how a lot, like you were saying, how people can easily just Google information and like see things there, and like coming from Kanye's perspective, we've known he was like always that person before all this to really stand up for like black people.
Absolutely. That's why I'm so disappointed.
And then I always tell this to Joe, like, Kanye's been in that position where he's tried to stand for us as people and create that change. And then when he really start to dive in and started to kind of create something for within himself, just like how you had to compromise when you're talking to the white people, you got to speak in their language. Right? So it's like when you're going through those trial and errors, being oppressed, holding on to what you truly believe in and understanding that there's no change, somehow something has to come about for you to really like create something different. And like Albert Einstein said, like the true form of insanity comes from, doing the same thing over and over and expecting change. So I feel as though like, he's misinformed one. And when you listen to his interviews, I'm not sure if you have, like Charlemagne would even say like, he's obsessed with the idea of Trump being a reality star and just being president. He didn't do his research on like all the things that he was going into, his personal beliefs, yada yada. Because look at what the position he's in now, And I'm not using that as an excuse, but that's also like the misguidedness that a lot of people are like coming from, not really like really receiving the information as they should. And I'm not just gonna go ahead and just like just tarnish a person that I truly believe in because of, he's a public figure and he should be responsible for what he says. At the end of the day, we all know Kanye treats himself as any other human being.
Right.
But
you can't.
But and that's what I'm saying. And
he really doesn't.
He really don't, because hold on.
He asserts himself as a genius.
Yeah.
And he asserts himself as an innovator and a free thinker, which all may be true, but you're free to think over there. You know what I mean? No, he's not.
He's publicly.
No, he's putting it. No, but he's not though.
Putting it on a
because
platform.
Listen, he's not though. He's really not, because he has a way that he wants people to think, which may be pure, may not be pure.
He knows
But he said it many times. So now, you as a fan, you can't say, well, he's just another person.
Yeah.
No, if you're gonna go off like what he says, you really got to go off what he says, and he says that he is an influencer of change, and the change that his words have the potential of bringing, whether intentional or not, are regressive.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying.
In what sense?
Regressive in the sense that keep people fucking stupid by ostracizing them from information that they're not yet ready to comprehend.
And
like,
if we're being honest, like, and I've had this discussion with a lot of my peers, a lot of my black peers, and like, don't look up to Kanye as a political figure, of course. However, when you're supporting a person's music, you're essentially supporting them, like you're putting money in his pocket for him to be on that platform. So like, to me, I still take offense to a lot of the things that he says in support of this man. And I really feel as though like he's really lost his way, because there was a point in time where like Kanye was really giving back to the community, like the whole Donda's House thing. And like, I've met Shay, like I've met Rhyme Fest. Like I have this man's number. Like we were in communication, like Kanye was his co-writer and about Donda's House. And like, this was like, I think 2 years back when this man was telling me that Kanye really wasn't doing nothing for Chicago anymore. So like,
he told you that.
He personally told me this. So like, this is not anything, this is not a new occurrence.
This isn't personal, this isn't about you just being hurt. Like,
exactly. So like, when I saw those tweets, like obviously people, a lot of people haven't had those conversations with Rhyme Fest. When I saw those tweets between him and Kim Kardashian, it wasn't him trying to bash Kanye on the public platform, because this was something that he was trying to reach out to Kanye before him openly supporting Trump. This was when Obama was still president, you know. And this is information. This is firsthand information that I'm getting from Rhymefest, and him saying, yeah, like I've been trying to, you know, work with Donda's House and stuff like that, but like we're struggling right now, and Kanye's not putting in that work, and he is in need of help. And this is before like him publicly saying this, you know. So like that's when I was just like, this is real stuff, you know. So it's hard for me to continue to support someone who, and then on top of that, Kanye is very misinformed. Like Kanye himself said he doesn't read. So like he's misinformed.
And he puts value in that.
And he puts value in that, which again, like Joseph said, it's very regressive.
He's at where he's at because of the way that
And he will never get to where he should be.
Exactly.
Because of
where should Kanye be?
in a place where he can do his work and also understand that there are people under him. It's like what I was saying, where you just want to take your own imperfect system and replace it with somebody else's just because you're so busy looking at what that imperfect system has done to you.
Yeah.
He's not using his fucking head.
Yeah.
You're fucking kids up right now. And I think people need to realize that like certain things carry more value than others.
Yeah.
All I know is I'm asking this question. Is Kanye fucking your lives up?
Let me finish what I'm about to say. But I'm not a child.
Yeah, but
So many things in my background. I was raised as an Ethiopian first. So my loyalty is not to Kanye from Chicago. Chicago is not my home. Like for real. Like I was raised with the value that life is beautiful because you make it beautiful. Not that we were overthrown by Italians or whatever. None of that bullshit entered my life. First of all, because it's not true. Second of all, because second of all, because like it's a real thing. Like the same way my parents had an influence on me because of the respect I had for them, knowing that they are my roots. A lot of people look up to Kanye as a father figure because he came up in that era.
Exactly.
A lot of kids our age ain't come up with parents.
Right.
Think about it. Crack was in the 80s. A lot of people's parents are dead or in jail. Our age. Like they're really, I know a lot of kids whose parents are like that. So it's like, especially in the DC area.
Yeah.
So it's like now, who are they growing up listening to?
Yeah.
Graduation, late registration, college dropout, 808s and heartbreaks.
Yeah.
Like, come on, this is shit that really affected me personally and a lot of people. And like, his music is so beautiful and I appreciate it so much. But you have to put human understanding and our growth as a society over that feeling that you felt personally. And that's like looking past yourself and what you hold dear.
All right,
you know?
hold on. But before you say that, because I want to say this, like if none of the change or whatever he's trying to really like make different, if he didn't do what he's doing, we wouldn't be able to have the conversation that we're saying right now.
What does that have to do with what he's doing now?
But what I'm trying to say is,
I would prefer to not have had this conversation. I would have preferred for Kanye to speak out against Trump. That would have been the Kanye that I grew to love. You know, like I started listening to Kanye because of the stuff he was saying. Like this is the same man that said we wouldn't make it past 25. Jokes on you, we still alive.
That's
like
what I'm saying. So for you to be saying things like that, all right.
But that's not who he is anymore.
So you're saying that he has a key that we don't have because he made it this far, is what you're saying?
What I'm saying is this. I'm not saying what he's doing is perfect, and I'm not agreeing to everything that he's saying. I don't want you guys to be confused by that at all. I'm not agreeing to his statements. Right. I'm not agreeing to how he's going about doing the things. I don't agree to that at all. But what I am agreeing to is the act of change. And I don't think it's right, but I feel as though he's going to, like, within probably maybe like 2 or 3 years, there could be something that he probably said that probably triggered in someone's head to cause some sort of impact to really create something for a lot of people.
Whose side though?
No. Well, he's saying that the same way like what he was saying kind of impacted us back then. It may impact somebody now.
Right, but I feel like why be influential in that controversial sense? Like why be on that side in order to
speak his truth though. He has to be like what he might think.
No. I don't disagree with that, but I just feel as though if what you're saying is that like Kanye could be that person who sparks up the future Malcolm X or the future Angela Davis, like Kanye could have already been that person doing what he was doing when he released College Dropout and like the message that he was delivering. And he was that person. Like I literally before going into a lot of these meetings would listen to Kanye. Before, like as I was driving down like Skid Row, I would listen to Kanye's old stuff because it was so influential in my life. But the things he's saying now is divisive and it's not uplifting the Black community. And I'm not supporting anyone that doesn't support me or my people, period.
Cool.
I'm not putting pocket money into his pockets.
Say no more.
Aleem, I just feel like you're hanging on to like.
The old Kanye.
No. I don't think so. That's not. No. I don't think that's what it is. I think like you recognize like his ability to just really change people's perspective, and maybe the way he is coming off to me might not be the way he's coming off to somebody who may affect change in the future, which is all well and good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know what's right and what's wrong. Yeah. And regardless, like, just because some kid grows up in the hood doesn't mean all the people that he sees doing all the bad stuff that they're doing, it might not affect him to go do those things like it affected everyone else. It might affect him to go do something else. Everything has a different effect on different people. But that doesn't mean that just because of that, growing up in the hood is okay. That doesn't mean that growing up around people who are like really ruining lives and like people whose lives are ruined is okay. It doesn't mean that's okay. It doesn't mean that if that was the case, then our parents wouldn't have came here.
Yeah.
Like real shit. Like just if they were really like operating off of the sense that, oh, whatever is whatever is, and there's no effect of whatever we do or anything, we would be dead. We would not be fed. We would not be clothed. We would just be like out here wilding.
Right.
You know, we've seen the effects of that. And when you're in a position, a parent type position, let's be real, because Kanye is the father of a lot of these niggas.
Yeah.
When you're in that
and
parent,
father of 3 biracial children.
yeah, and and you have to give him his respect for the path that he has paved. But now, as we're becoming adults, we are able to see and know what types of decisions and what types of thinking really fucks our peers up.
Exactly.
So if we see him spreading a message like that, you might not be compelled to go as far as Saturn is going and completely like remove him from your life until you feel like he's in a place where you can bring him back, or period, whatever the case may be. But at the same time, you really just have to like look and be aware and say, this is not healthy. Like, this is not really going to help people in the long run.
Yeah.
Overall. Because even in the minority, there's a majority, you know? Like, there's a group that will be affected, a main group that will be affected a certain way because of what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, or they might feel comfortable, or whatever the case may be. So that's all I'm saying. I'm just saying, let's not act like, you know, just because he's changed shit before, that when we're grown and we're old enough to know what's right from wrong, that we can just sit by and say, okay, yeah, that's cool. Like, if it's not cool, it's not cool.
Right.
Like,
Not
it's
saying
just
that
not.
Kanye West
saying I
isn't
agree with it.
redeemable, but you know, not saying that like, you know, he's not redeemable or he can't come back from this. Like, plenty of people have come back from, you know, their idiotic ways. However, you know, it's important to keep these people that we follow accountable and to make sure that they know that, you know, I don't support what you're doing, and until you change, then I just will continue not supporting you.
You're just letting him know you're upset.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, it's, you know, that's what it is. It is what it is.
So, yeah. That was a little slice of Saturn, guys.
Oh, I like
Yeah.
that. Slice of
But yeah, we appreciate you very much for coming on.
Thank you guys for inviting me.
Nah, no problem, man. It's so great to see like people you kind of grew up with a little bit just like change and become their own person.
Yeah.
And so I'm grateful for that. But yeah, so that's signing off. 200 podcast.
Yeah, 200, we out. Go ahead, Go ahead and if you got any last
Yeah, you
words,
got anything you wanna
last
say?
words, anything you'd like to promote?
Well,
say anything.
yeah.
You said your father's TV channel. You definitely got to shout that out.
Yeah,
Check us out.
well,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's MIA Mia TV, Made in Africa television. So, yeah, we broadcast on Saturdays live, so you can Google search that and find that. Follow me on social media. My Instagram is Saturn Chabong, SATURNE.
In the description.
In the description, Saturn Chabong. There you go, because it's kind of long. And thank you guys so much for having me. This was super fun. I hope to do this again and work with you guys on future projects.
Yeah,
And
of course.
yeah, this was exciting.
Yeah.
All right, y'all.
200, we out.
Peace. Hey, 200.